Hello folks, and welcome to the first video in what I hope will be a bit of a Let's Play series on the Elder Scrolls Legends. So, TESL, this game, is a digital collectible card game published in the Elder Scrolls universe by Direwolf Digital, which is a card game or digital card game producing company that includes many Hall of Fame and top players from the Magic the Gathering scene. So TESL, as well as its sister game Eternal, are kind of labors of love by industry pros that are aiming to kind of target niche markets within the CCG industry and kind of pick up some of the design space that's not currently being utilized by games like Magic itself, or Hearthstone, or Hex, or some of the more popular entries in the space. And in particular, these games are a little bit more technical, a little bit more challenging in some aspects than what you might expect from Hearthstone, and just provide, I think, a really interesting game experience. That being said, I do think that TESL is a better game for people that are just coming into the CCG space than pretty much anything else I've ever played. I would recommend this as your first collectible card game above, Magic Duels or Hearthstone or Eternal or Duelist or anything like that. I think this does a very good job of introducing CCG concepts, of giving you a very strong tutorial and kind of single player experience, PvE experience, and then building into a PvP experience that is quite enjoyable from the lowest levels on up. And I'll talk about where I think this game has its advantages as we go through this series, but also I'm just going to use this video to kind of introduce the game and show you what to expect. So I'm going to jump right into a game here. Just a practice battle against a computer opponent, because that's going to give us all the time we need to talk. I'm going on the lowest level just so that we're guaranteed some good gameplay. Games against the harder computer players tend to go pretty quickly, and I want to play a kind of a drawn-out game to give you guys the best example of what TESL looks like. I have all these different decks to choose from, and I'm kind of excited to talk about all these different decks and what they mean and where they come from. But for now, I'm just going to start with Anne Cano's Cunning and jump right in. So I am going to be talking here as if you've never played a CCG before. I know most people have at least a little experience with Hearthstone or Magic or something like that, but I want these videos to be accessible, so I want to kind of start right from the top. So we're loading the field of play here, and choosing our opening hands, and then I'm going to talk about exactly what we're seeing on screen. So my opponent and I are represented by these two avatars. You see that we both have 30 life. There's this battlefield between us where we're going to play our cards, and then our hands. My opponent currently has 3 cards in hand because he played one, and I have 4 cards in hand. This game works as almost all CCGs do, by me and my opponent taking turns and taking cards from our hand, playing them for a cost, and having some effect as a result. So the first and most important thing to look at here is this little blue bubble, which tells me how much magicka I currently have access to. This is the same as mana or power or whatever your scaling resource is in other games. Basically, the amount I can currently pay in order to play out my cards. So in this case, on turn 1, I have access to up to 1 magicka, and I haven't spent that 1 yet. So I have 1 of 1 magicka remaining. I use that magicka to pay for the cards in my hand, and the number in the top left corner, so the 1 in this case, tells me how much magicka I would have to pay in order to play this card. So in order to play the Firebolt action, I would need to spend my only one magicka. What that would do for me is allow me to deal 2 damage to a creature. So by spending 1 magicka, I could play this Firebolt and deal 2 damage to, say, my opponent's enraged Mudcrab. But let's talk about these creatures for a second. A creature has an associated cost, just like any other action. So this creature costs 4. And then it has 2 other numbers on the card. The number next to the dagger, the 4 in the middle of the card here, is the attacking power of the card. It tells you how much damage that creature is going to deal in combat. And the number on the other side, on the right side, the 3 by the little shield, is the creature's defensive toughness. And it tells you how much damage that creature can take in total before it's removed from play. So this Cloud Rest Illusionist does 4 damage in each combat, and once it takes a total of 3 damage, it will be destroyed. Alright, so my opponent has a 2-1, a little crab that deals 2 damage each time it attacks, and can take up to 1 damage before it's killed. What that means is I could totally use my Firebolt to kill my opponent's crab. Okay, so that's just basic CCG stuff. Every collectible card game since Magic has worked in pretty much this way. Paying resources for cards and having creatures with an attacking power and a defensive toughness. In this game, much like in Hearthstone or Duelist, we get 1 extra point of magicka each turn. So next turn I'll be able to spend 2 magicka total, then 3, 4, 5, until I hit 12, which is where it tops out. You don't get any extra magicka after 12. Because I played second, I also have this ring of magicka, which will allow me 3 times throughout the game to boost my total magicka by 1. So I can use this right now, go up to 2 magicka, and be able to play my 2-cost spell if I really want to. Alright, now the things that make TESL immediately different from other collectible card games. First of all, you need to pay close attention to these 5 blue runes around my character's avatar. Same 5 around my opponent's. These are without a doubt the biggest difference between TESL and other games. Every time an opponent deals 5 damage to me, so when I go 25 life, 20 life, 15 life, 10 life, or 5 life, one of these runes will break, and I'll draw an extra card. So again, every time my opponent deals 5 damage to me, I draw an extra card, which means that my opponent cannot take advantage of a strong board state or a tempo advantage without allowing me to draw extra resources to deal with it. So you cannot pressure your opponent directly in this game without giving them the resources they need to deal with your pressure. What that means is attacking your opponent's face is considerably less important, or at least considerably more risky than it is in any other CCG. And that makes TESL much more about establishing a very strong board state than it is about rushing to kill your opponent. The second thing that you need to notice is that the battlefield is divided down the center by this blue line into 2 lanes. And the lanes are really critical as well. First of all, creatures can't attack across lanes. So my opponent's crab in the left lane here can't attack anything that I might play in the right lane. And likewise, anything I play in the right lane can't attack my opponent in the left. And we can't attack across here either. So it's like having 2 different battlefields to manage at once. More than that, the fields aren't identical mechanically. On this lane, the field lane, rules work pretty much the same way they do in, say, Hearthstone. The opponent gets to decide exactly which of my creatures he wants to attack. Unless one of my creatures has an ability that draws an attack to it specifically, my opponent has full control in terms of how attackers assign their damage to blockers. The shadow lane is a little different. When I play creatures into the shadow lane, they gain cover. And when a creature gains cover, it cannot be directly attacked by the opponent until that cover goes away. So that means the shadow lane works a little less like Hearthstone and a little bit more like Magic, in that when I play a creature into the Shadow Lane, it's not the currently existing creatures that get to decide how to assign damage to it. My creature played into the Shadow Lane doesn't have to enter combat until I want it to. I can play utility creatures here, or creatures that allow me to kind of deal with problematic threats from my opponent, things like that. There's a lot more kind of back and forth to play in this thing. That being said, it's much easier to establish a dominating attacking board presence in the field lane. So usually, games will play out with players kind of fighting over the field lane for a little while, and then slowly building up a backup plan in the Shadow lane, kind of working to kind of build a defensive presence and drop some utility creatures in there to give them a different way of attacking their opponent compared to the all-out brawl that tends to go on in the field lane. So there's just a really dynamic setup right from the beginning. Before you look at a single card, between the lane mechanics and the ruins, there's just a lot more to think about in terms of deploying your creatures and deciding when to attack than you would find in a lot of other CCGs. Even in Magic. Magic does not have this sort of complexity, despite the fact that Magic involves a lot more kind of minute-to-minute interaction than digital CCGs do. The lane system and the ruin system really add something unique to this game. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Everything else is just a matter of kind of reading your cards and knowing what they do, and then figuring out strategy and tactics as you go along. So with that introduction made, I'm going to play out this game and kind of talk my way through it, and hopefully you can kind of see how things go from there, and hopefully it's intriguing. So here we go. My opponent has their 2/1 crab. I could kill it with my firebolt, but that's not a great use of this spell. I'm happy to kind of let that crab sit for a little while until I can figure out exactly what I'm doing strategically in this game. I'm just going to pass the turn. My opponent draws a card for their turn. Their max magicka goes up to 2. They attack me with their crab, taking me down to 28 life, and they play a 2/2 Hissed Speaker. So they played 2 magicka to play this creature with 2 attacking power and 2 toughness, and also an ability that says that while his speaker is in play, my opponent's max magicka is increased by 1. I don't want that. I don't want my opponent to be able to play spells a turn ahead of schedule. So now I'm glad I kept my fireball from last turn. I can use it to kill my opponent's utility creature. Alright, that being said, I'm now down to only 1 magicka. I will pass my turn. My opponent attacks me with the crab again, and decides to play this Dwarven Spider. It's a 0/3 creature with the Guard ability. The Guard ability just means I have to attack that creature before I can attack anything else in the lane, or attack my opponent, assuming I'm coming from my field lane. My opponent also played a 1/2 Guild Recruit, which is a creature with the Lethal ability, which means that any creature damaged by this Guild Recruit is going to die itself. So, some troublesome things developing on my opponent's side here, but my opponent's attacking ability is still very small. If they want to kind of start pressuring me with just this 3 points of attack that they have, they're going to be drawing me an awful lot of cards awfully quickly. So I don't have to worry about this really whatsoever. And that's kind of an interesting aspect of TESL over, even games that would be exclusively mechanically identical to playing in the field lane here. If this was Hearthstone, I'd be more worried about my opponent's attackers. As it is, I'm totally happy to take damage from them. I can play a number of cards in my hand. I can play the Mage's Trick, or I can play either of these 4 magicka spells by tapping into my ring here. The Mage's Trick is a kill spell that I don't have a good use for right now. I can use it to kill the crab, but like I said, I'm not too worried about the crab. Lightning Bolt is an even stronger kill spell, which I could use to kill the Dwarven Spider, but since that creature can't attack me, I'm not too scared of it. And then Cloud Rest Illusionist is a fairly powerful creature, certainly stronger than anything my opponent is feeling, but I wouldn't get any value out of its summon ability if I played it this turn. So none of my options are great. I think the least bad is to use the Mage's Trick to kill the crab. that gains me an extra life and draws me a card. In this case, the card I drew is Conjuration Scholar, one of the best cards in my deck, so I'm happy with how that turned out, and I now know more or less what my strategy is going to be going forward in this game. Okay, so my opponent continues to attack me. He's beefed up his lethal creature, which is a little bit worrying, but I do have a way around that lethal point of damage in my Cloud Dash Illusionist or the Calm spell I just drew. A little bit more troubling is this 3/3. I have to decide how worried I am about that. I don't have a ton of options this turn. The best cards in my hand are 6 cost cards, and I can only get up to 5 Magicka this turn. That means I have to play, if I want to be efficient, either my Illusionist or my Lightning Bolt. My Illusionist still can't be used to maximum value, so I'm going to use my Lightning Bolt here to kill my opponent's 3/3, and then pass the turn along. My opponent's going to deal me a point of damage. That is going to activate my rune and allow me to draw this Ice Storm card. I might be interested in using this card to kind of deal my opponent a bunch of damage at some point before I start developing my board. I don't know. I think what I'm actually going to do is just spend the single point of mana to play out my Conjuration Scholar. Like I said, one of my stronger cards. That's going to allow me to create this 5/5 Frost Atronach and pass the turn along. My opponent's probably going to kill that 5/5. Ooh. My opponent silences the 5/5. Now a human player might have decided to go after my Conjuration Scholar, because that's actually the scary card in my board. Instead, my opponent decided to kill the 5/5. That's just kind of the computer being a computer. Now, because of that choice, I'm going to use A Night to Remember to remove my Conjuration Scholar from the field lane, place him into the shadow lane, reactivate his summon ability to give me a fresh 5/5, and continue to play my turn from there. Let's see. I think I'll play out this Cunning Ally. And then I'm ready to pass the turn. Just before I do, the Cunning Ally is a 3/3 creature for 3, and its ability says to put a Firebolt into my hand if the top card of my deck is an Intelligence card, a blue card. It turned out the top card of my deck was an Intelligence card, so I drew this Firebolt. I don't know if I'm going to have use for that yet, but it's a nice little bonus I get for playing this creature about half the time, because about half the cards in my deck are Intelligence cards. Anyway, I'm now very quickly establishing a dominant board position here. I'm happy to pass things back to my opponent. Okay, so my opponent comes in with this kind of big old beefy creature, this 4/8 troll, which also has a regenerate ability. Regenerate means that its health is going to continue to go back to 8 every turn at the start of my opponent's turn if I can't deal with it completely before then. I can. This Piercing Javelin will allow me to kill it. My 3/3 can kill my opponent's guard creature. And now I have to think about whether I'm in position to start attacking my opponent. Remember that if I hit my opponent with this big old 5/4, dealing him 5 damage, I'll break a rune and allow him to draw an extra card. So that's a little bit worrisome. I don't necessarily want to give my opponent a ton of cards when my board is not that tough. But I do have a ton of cards in my hand already, and for that reason and that reason alone, I don't mind putting on this smaller amount of pressure. My opponent drew a card. It's a Prophecy card. He could play it right away. So he got a free 0/9 out of my decision to attack him. Does that mean the decision was wrong? Arguably so, but that's kind of how things break out in this game. It's really, really risky to attack your opponent unless you have a giant board to back up that threat. That all being done, I'll pass along to my opponent. Opponent has a 3/2 Crocodile and a 5/5 with Breakthrough. The Breakthrough ability is equivalent to Magic's Trample. Basically, if this deals damage to my 3/3, 3 of the damage will be used to kill my creature, and the extra 2 points of damage will be used against me directly. Okay, so we're going to begin the process of breaking through this portcullis. We're going to use my cunning ally to take out the crocodile here. We're going to play the freshly drawn Conjuration Scholar to make another 5/5. This one will trade off with my opponent's 5/5. And we're going to pass the turn. Nothing to do with that extra 2 mana. Opponent trades creatures as expected and plays out a 4/2. Okay. So, we can't do anything about my opponent's 4/2. It's got a bunch of protection. First of all, the portcullis is in the way of me attacking it. And because it has cover, having just been played into the shadow lane, you can see this kind of cloudy thing going on here, I couldn't attack it even if there wasn't a portcullis in the way. Nothing stops me, however, from just hitting it with Fireball. Cool. That guy out of the way, we'll finish off the portcullis. We are free to deal 2 points of damage to our opponent here, because that's not going to break a rune, so there's no risk associated with it. And then we just can play out our cards however we see fit. I think what's going to happen here is I'm going to play this Skywatch Vindicator. I'm going to pump up my Frost Atronach. Going to use one of the Magicka off my ring to play another Cunning Ally. Cunning Ally is going to draw me yet another Firebolt. And now I'm feeling pretty good. Now I have enough points of power to kill my opponent in 2 turns. In total, I've got 7, 11, 14, 15, 16. So now, with that kind of overwhelming board presence, I don't mind attacking my opponent. Okay, we'll use the Prophecy to remove my opponent's blocker. And then we're going to start an attack here. Now, ordering this attack is kind of a bit of mental gymnastics here. I'm going to start attacking with my 7/6. 2 reasons for this. One, it's the attack that I care most about. If my opponent finds a way to block attacks in the cards that he's going to draw, I do want to make sure this guy gets in. 2, 7 is the perfect amount of damage to deal right now because it will take him to 16 life, breaking only the first rune and not the second. So with those things in mind, I'm going to hit him with the 7/6. Cool. My opponent drew a card off his rune, but it wasn't a prophecy. It didn't immediately affect the battlefield. Now, I could attack next with either the 4/4 or the 3/3. The 4/4 makes sense in this case because both the 4/4 and the 3/3 are going to break a rune. And the 4/4 is, as I said, with the 7/6, kind of the attack that I want to make sure gets through the most. However, if I attack with the 3/3 first, I'm able to then use both of my 1/1s, getting them in and taking my opponent down to 11 before I end up breaking that rune. And now this rune doesn't even matter. Since this is my last attack of the turn, any prophecy that my opponent might have drawn off it wouldn't have affected combat damage because I'd already dealt all my combat damage. So just processing how I wanted to go through that combat really revolves around the exact kind of points that I'm taking off my opponent's life total. Okay, I'm going to play out this Mystic Dragon, and then with a bunch of spells in hand that I can use to kind of shore myself up against whatever my opponent is doing, pass the turn, and get ready to win the game on my next turn. Okay, so my opponent has indeed put up a bit of a formidable defense here. He's got 2 guard creatures that I'm going to have to deal with before I can hope to break through to kill my opponent here. I believe that I can do this without much trouble, but there is still that last rune of my opponent's to consider, and I don't want to lose to a random prophecy off the top. So I'm going to start with Calm to weaken my opponent's Preserver. Then I'm going to deal 4 damage to it with my Skywatch Vindicator, finish off with my Firebolt, and then come in with my 3/3 to see what that last rune's about. Okay, that last rune didn't offer any significant trouble, so now I'm going to kill the guard with my dragon and finish off my opponent. And that's a game of TESL. So I hope that caught your interest. If you've never played a CCG before, just kind of the general mechanics of deploying creatures and engaging in combat, I hope was interesting. And if you have, I do think we did a reasonable job of showing off the interesting aspects of TESL surrounding the runes that we have with our life, and also the different lanes to play in. Anyway, this video is now 25 minutes long, which is perhaps too long, but thank you very much for watching. I look forward to doing more of these, and I'll see you all later.